Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, Wargaming did something very unexpected and actually buffed a dockyard ship. Now, if you look back at the previous dockyard ships, most of these ships, I think except for the ZF6, have come out and are generally received by the community as a whole as fairly lackluster, again with the exception of the ZF6 and maybe the Puerto Rico. The Puerto Rico, of course, was completely overshadowed by the drama surrounding the ship. Puerto Rico itself is a pretty solid ship, but of course, again, the drama kind of overshadowed that. But if you look back at like the Odin, the the Japanese battleship, the Tier 9 one that they're making the Brawler version of, whatever that one was called, the Marlboroughs. I mean, the Marlboro is like a good meme ship, but I wouldn't say it is a coveted ship by many. Oh, the Hizen, that's the one I'm thinking about. For the most part, the dockyard ships are normally, yeah. Most of that is because, for whatever reason, Wargaming likes to, a week or so before their release, change something about them. For example, the Odin's main battery gun reload time was up to 22 seconds on a ship that has tiny guns for a Tier 8 battleship. They upped the reload time on those and decreased the reload time on the secondaries, which that soured the ship for a lot of players. But for the Atlantico, which is the upcoming dockyard ship, she's a Tier 8 Pan-American Super Dreadnought battleship based upon the Pan-American Super Dreadnoughts that were being produced in between World War I and World War II. She got a pretty large buff. If you want to read the stuff blog, not a very long one, you can find the link in the description down below. But they state, changes to test ships, closed test 11.2. Based on the results of previous testing, we're applying the changes to Atlantico and Edgar, which is the Super Minotaur. So the Atlantico, parameters of the 234mm secondary battery shells were changed. Maximum damage increased from 3,350 to 3,850. Pretty big buff. And here comes a really big buff. Armor penetration increased from 39 to 59 millimeters of pen. That's a 20 millimeter buff on the pen of the 234s. They're Goliath main battery guns on the ship. And the main battery firing range was increased from 17.4 to 18.6 kilometers. So that's a pretty big buff for the Atlantico. But is it enough? So now you'll be able to pin a lot more. You could already pin the 32 millimeter threshold that you need to pin when you're up at higher tier, but now you can pin up to 59 millimeters of armor, which is great. That's that much more you can pin at tier 8 and above. But that's not my main gripe with the ship. So the Atlantico, it is again a super dreadnought style of battleship, and it is slow. It is ridiculously slow for a tier 8 battleship. This ship goes 25 knots at tier 8. Now getting to super dreadnoughts, didn't expect it to be rocking and rolling above like 32 knots or anything like that, but 25 knots. And keep in mind, from tier 8 and up, anything below 28 knots is considered to be quite slow by battleship standards. This thing goes 25. Now I thought, well, maybe it goes this slow because it's insanely heavily armored. You know, maybe the bow and stern are absolutely covered in icebreakers and nigh impenetrable strips of armor, but no, it's mostly 32 for the most part. If you have access to a website like Games Model 3D, you can see that for yourself, and the nose and stern are, for the most part, completely covered in 32 millimeters of armor, as is the ship's deck for mostly the bow and stern. And the thing has a massive bow and stern. This is a massive ship. I mean, look at it. Look at all the secondaries on there, too. All those Goliath caliber secondary guns. Like, it looks like it's going to be a great meme, but I don't think it's going to be very practical or useful, especially in today's World of Warships. Now, maybe you're wondering, too, well, maybe the main battery guns make up for it. Well, they don't. She has 15-inch guns, which isn't a bad caliber to have at tier 8 by any stretch of the imagination, but at the end of the day, they're just 15-inch guns. Can't really overmatch too much, or anything at all, when you get up to higher tier. And they're not all that accurate either. She has a 1.8 Sigma. Her maximum dispersion, at least according to the original dev ball, is 234 meters, and to my knowledge, that has not been improved in any way. So even if you were to build into the main battery guns, which would kind of seem counterintuitive to a ship with Goliath caliber secondary guns, you can't really rein in the dispersion. Now, granted, I haven't played the ship, and we're going off of just stats here, and yes, stats can only tell you so much, and it's happened before where a ship looks like crap on paper, it comes out and it's pretty darn good, and the reverse has happened too, where a ship looks good on paper, it comes out, and it's not that great. So what you're left with is a very slow Super Dreadnought battleship that does have good armor for brawling, has very thick side armor. The Citadel looks like it's good and protected, and I'm sure when you're top tier in this thing and you can get into a brawling match, it'll probably be a pretty darn good brawling ship. I mean, again, you've got freaking Goliath caliber guns as secondary guns, and then you've got, I believe, somewhere along the lines of 10 127s on top of that. 10 127s on top of that to back that up. Now, granted, that is 127mm guns, and unless it has some special HE pin, which I don't think it does, it only pins 21mm of armor, which means if you want to get those 127s up over the 32mm threshold, you're going to have to take the IFHE skill, which then is going to cut your fire chance down by half on every gun on the ship, including your main battery 15-inch guns, which 15-inch guns at tier 8, you're going to run into a lot of 32mm bow and stern battleships, which you kind of need that HE fire chance to do any damage to. And you're going to have to cut that in half if you want your 127s to get up over 32. So, yeah, if this was a normal tier 8 that you could get for normal tier 8 prices, and you didn't have to grind your life away in a Dockyard event. Well, granted, I'll take that back. The previous Dockyard events have been quite manageable for the average Joe. It's not until the last 2 mission sets that they get quite grindy. It's not like the Puerto Rico, but a ship that you either way have to spend a lot of time in the game working toward, and still have to fork out several thousand doubloons to finish the last few sections of the Dockyard to get. If it wasn't that, I'd say it might be worth it for the meme potential, but on paper here, I don't think this is enough to make the Atlantico worth the grind. Now, I am still, of course, planning to get the ship when it comes out and review her and let you guys know once the ship does come out. And this is all just, again, going off of the stats, but it doesn't really look like it from here. What would make it worth it is if they cranked either the main battery accuracy up a bit, so you have a ship that's slow but good at brawling and also has pretty accurate guns for a tier 8 battleship in a tier 10 game. And do keep in mind too, they just buffed the range out to 18.6 kilometers. I believe they nerfed it down to 17.4. Now it's out to 18.6. So you still have an 18.6 kilometer range on this ship, which is incredibly short by tier 10 standards, and you don't have a spotter or a fighter either, so it's not like you can potentially get that range out a little bit more and stay relevant in the match. So a lot of times when you get up to tier 10, you have a slow battleship that's not that well armored for tier 10, and then you're going to have an 18.6 kilometer range where you have a bunch of higher tier ships that can outrange you. So they either need to crank up the accuracy of the main battery guns or improve the armor in some way, shape, or form. Either give it a fairly big icebreaker, something like the German battle cruisers get, like with the Schlieffen, it's got that big old massive icebreaker that wraps around its bow. That way you can face tank a lot of the 18-inch that you're going to see at tier 10, especially with the super ships now. You got the frickin' Shikishima, the Satsuma, the Hanover, the Yami, the Musashi. They can all go right through that massive 32mm bow, not to mention the HE spam that's going to be able to go through that 32mm bow. So some type of plating there to counteract that, or give the poor ship like a 28 knot top speed. I think that'll be better. Now, of course, with the speed flag, you'd be able to get it up to 27 and a half, which is more manageable. But again, for Brawling, you need ships that can quickly get into a close-in situation, and not a ship that everyone's going to see coming from a mile away with how slow it is. So I don't think it's enough. It's a wonderful buff. I'm very glad they did give the ship something before it came out, and we still have some time before the next update drops and the Atlantico comes out, so they could give it a last minute buff, and I hope they do. If they did either of those two things, either tune the guns up or give it a little bit more armor, I think that would make the ship much more attractive and make the dockyard much more attractive to the average Joe. But again, we'll see what happens when the ship does come out. I think the next update should be, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks away from now. So we'll see what happens with that. The Edgar, if you're wondering, they reduced the number of bursts that she gets in her alternative firing mode. So instead of getting 4 bursts in her alternative firing mode, she gets 3. Haven't played the ship, so I can't really testify to how that ship feels. But yeah, that did happen too. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the changes to the Atlantico down below. Again, such a rare change, seeing a dockyard ship changed for the better this close to its release. Again, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs. Just passed 34,100 a few days ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Again, hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday and a wonderful week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.